Finales in Doctor Who tend to be some of the weaker aspects, I think that's pretty fair to say. It's make or break for a series, and that's not just true to Doctor Who, that's true for pretty much all shows. It's what leaves a taste in your mouth after you finish the show. I don't think I've actually seen anyone enjoy a Doctor Who finale since 2017, 8 years ago. So as we approach the next finale, I thought we could look at some of why that's been the case ahead of the reality war. Obviously, keep in mind that this is all just my shortlist and my final decision. If you have a different one, feel free to put it in the comments below. I want to hear what you all think is the worst finale in the show.
Actually, no.
Cute.
Crap, mega crap.
But even by Series 5, there was a notable issue that Doctor Who was heading towards. Its attempts to up the stakes of each finale. Case in point being how Series 5 ended with them literally rebooting the universe. So you can't really up the stakes from that in terms of threat. So how do you up that? I guess time itself getting destroyed? So obviously, as we went on, we had more finales that were higher in stakes and bigger in scale, and not necessarily always for the better. But after you run through a lot of that, they end up messing with the lore of the established show, and with this being on TV for 60 plus years, there's a lot of lore to pull from. And I know there's going to be a few people that ask, why isn't the Timeless Child here? And I get it, it's not great, it's not a great episode, but I think all of these are probably worse. I'm trying to particularly look at these through the lens of the fact that they are the bookend to a series, like particularly the finale aspect of it, and I don't think The Timeless Child is worse than any of the ones on this list.
Is this going anywhere?
Yes.
The Last of the Time Lords and Empire of Death are the two that I would put into this category. Despite potential and positives to point at, these episodes retroactively affect the arc told throughout the rest of the series for me, in very different ways, mind you. Series 3 set up Harold Saxon and the Master very subtly and incorporated it into the world building of the series, as opposed to Season 1 having specific moments that actually halt the episodes to basically tell us that something is coming later on. So with the ending of Series 3, I find it to be a frustrating end due to the fact I just don't really buy it in the end. The power of prayer is essentially what saves the day here, and I just don't think that is satisfying or logical. That feels more in line with the fantastical approach of this new era, and so despite technically tying up loose ends, none of them really get satisfying answers, and you walk away with the feeling of, was that it? Empire of Death had a somewhat similar issue, but more with the ease of how they tackle the threat. So firstly, the Doctor and Ruby defeat the literal God of Death with a lead, and it's way too easy. It's an incredibly unsatisfying final episode because Sutekh shows up and does literally nothing for the entire episode. And as well as just an unsatisfying and rushed ending to what should be a massive villain, it feels like the fantastical elements that this season put a big focus on never had a payoff at all. In nearly every episode, we'd had a moment to stop to see the snow falling and not know how that's possible. Everything with Ruby's mother and time changing after the fact being a huge point as well. And yet, when we reach the finale, all resolutions basically contradict what we'd been seeing in the previous 7 episodes. So it ends with a finale that feels tonally out of tune with the rest of the season and ends up retroactively affecting the rewatch value, at least for me, because you know when those episodes stop that the answers, if there are any, aren't really good enough. But I do think it's an episode that has some very good performances and I think can be a lot of fun with some cool visuals and just cool little moments, but overall, as a finale, kind of fails. Now this category is about when you have quite a serialized story, but the finale just purely can't tie up all these loose ends. And so, of course, that includes the wedding of River Song. I think it's a real unfortunate case because each individual element here works on paper, but because of how serialized the rest of the series is and the fact that it rushes to the finish line across 45 minutes, it never spends any time on any of its ideas or resolutions, leading to every single one of them falling completely flat. Tackling the death of the Doctor, River Song's confusing plotline, the silence and Madame Kavarian, restoring the universe, restoring time, none of these plots work within the episode because none of them are given time to become more than an idea. I very nearly had Name of the Doctor on this list because it kind of just forgets to have an ending, but I think as an episode it overall works a bit better than all of these on the list, so it was just about saved. And then looking at the Vanquishers was a pretty expected flop in a similar vein. I mean, when we hit episode 5 of Flux, I kind of figured that there was no way they were going to be able to cram so many answers and resolutions into one episode. But when you have to split your main character into 3 separate physical entities because you've set too much up to finalize, you know it's going to be somewhat of an issue. When it comes to the actual Flux, Division, Swarm, and Unit, and other leading characters, the episode just doesn't have time to tie all of these knots together, leading to a finale where half the universe gets destroyed and not fixed. I mean, genuinely, everything that got destroyed was never reversed, and that's fine. That could be really interesting, in the fact that the Doctor fails there. And that's touched on a character level in Wildly Yonder and The Giggle, but if it was a part of the story that the Doctor really failed to save the universe, that could be really interesting. The finale treats everything as if the universe was saved, but it wasn't. It was just left in ruins, and we're expected to just kind of forget about it. And I think that's the biggest flaw with this finale and how it built so far, but by the end it felt like nothing actually changed. Nothing really happened. There was never any real consequence to the Doctor's failure, except for the Daleks trying to kill her in the New Year's special, but that's nothing new. That's what they do. So yeah, this is the worst one.
Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
I knew this was going to be the worst one as soon as I kind of watched a lot of these back. The Battle of Ranskor Avkolos is an abysmally dull and stupid episode of Doctor Who. From the get-go, I'm not really interested in this episode, honestly. This series had a really strange thing of not knowing whether it wanted to do cold opens or not, but we meet these like godlike characters doing something on the planet, some Force Jedi vibe stuff, with the return of Tim Shaw, a pure one-off villain from the opener of this series, but he's brought back as if he'd been set up, as if he'd been waiting to come back, but I don't know if he was ever mentioned again, really. It tries to build stakes just by saying that bad stuff has happened to this planet, but we never really see said devastation. Also, I've got to talk about the names Chibnall comes up with because it's actually hilarious. I can't take the episode seriously. How am I supposed to even remotely pay attention or care for characters when they have such silly names such as Paltraki, Song?
Paltraki, Sang.
What the fuck is even that? This episode is plagued with so much of the bad writing of this series. Obnoxious exposition, boring location, and boring characters. They tried to have this moral conflict between the Doctor and Graham, who is planning to kill Tim Shaw after he killed Grace in episode 1, but it's not really capitalised on, and the Doctor doesn't really try very hard to stop Graham. The episode tries to build mystery on pure MacGuffins that don't result in any interesting answers by the end. It feels like an episode where nothing happens. There's constant talking about nothing. I can barely explain the plot, but it's kind of a rip-off from Journey's End, because they literally use the TARDIS to restore the placement of all these planets that have been taken from where they belong. That's the same thing! Ryan and Graham's arcs of learning to be family is paid off in the most cliche possible way. It wasn't really developed well throughout the series, so again, I just didn't care, and unfortunately, the dramatic stuff it tries to do with Graham, I love Bradley Walsh, and I think he's one of the best parts of the Chibnall era because he's funny and he's charismatic, but he doesn't have the dramatic chops for me. And it doesn't help that his writing is bad. No one talks like this.
Don't tell the doc she'd be livid.
And of course, Yaz does nothing. I struggle to name anything that Yaz does in this era, and I feel bad. I like Mandip Gill. Her and Jodie seem to have great chemistry, but they never use that. They never even used Mandip. Like, Yaz is such a nothing character, and she had such great potential. Even for Chibnall, by his standards, this is a really bad one. There's really nothing going for it. I don't think I can say anything positive about this episode. There's no interesting ideas. It doesn't look good. It's grey and boring. The only good thing I can say is that it's not lore heavy, but I feel like I can't give it too much credit for that. Overall, this episode is just so boring. It's egregiously paced. So little happens, and when they have the nerve to try and do something, whoever is talking at the time might as well just turn around and break the fourth wall, because they literally just say what's happening. It looks scrapped together with first and second draft ideas from different episodes, with the return of Tim Shaw, as well as the Ux.
The Ux? No, the Ux.
What? The Ux? What? Why would you call a race the Ux? This episode doesn't just fail as a finale, as I've been talking about in this video, but it fails as an episode of Doctor Who, in pretty much every way for me. Biggest reason for why it's so far and away easily the worst is plainly because of how astonishingly boring it is. So in conclusion, as we are bracing ourselves for another RTD finale, which are always interesting, we can look back at these and hope that it's at least better than most of them. Most of them do have positives to them, except for the Series 11 finale. That is worst case scenario, I think. It feels like they got to the final episode and didn't know how to do a finale. It almost felt like because they chose not to do a series arc, they didn't know how to round things off. And it had a cool opportunity to do a standalone finale, do something cool with the characters, but it kind of doesn't. I mean, the template was kind of there in Series 10. That finale pays off character arcs and stuff, but in terms of like a story arc over the series, it's not like we're constantly leading to Mondas. We're not getting hints about Mondas or the Cybermen. The mystery of the series kind of revolved around the box, which was obviously halfway through revealed to be Missy, and we went from there. And another thing about that finale that's so great is because it doesn't feel universe threatening. I mean, we know that if the Cybermen get off this ship, that yeah, there is going to be a massive threat, but we're not seeing that. We're taking place on the front line to prevent that from happening. Our stakes are on this ship and with the characters. In total honesty, Series 11 doesn't really have any character arcs. Any that it tries don't work. It tries to do this big scale thing as well, with all these planets being like taken, but it all takes place on a dull, derelict planet that you don't really get the sense of scale, and there's no care. I'm getting bored talking about it now. The last few years, as I've said, seem to be dedicated to making massive lore changes for the show, in an attempt to make every finale feel bigger than the last, but just let the past be the past, man. Let the lore be the lore and build more on it going forward. There's no need to go back and retroactively change stuff so frequently, because at this point in Season 2, which I'm loving,
Tables don't do that.
but we're rerunning all the last of the Time Lord points that we did back in the 2000s.